Looks like excellent turnout so far.
I know 3 minutes ago it was only me and John, so we were like, that would be a fun meeting.
Yeah, well, I'd have been on earlier, but I was coming from another call that I was chairing. Here I is.
Well, if this turns out to be the list, the call should at least be pleasant and with relatively low levels of hostile controversy.
Well, if there's going to be controversy, I'd rather have it be on the call than pending afterwards.
Oh, I completely agree.
Absolutely. I did mark some slides as potentially controversial, what people can guess if you had a chance to have a look. Okay, let's give people 2-3 more minutes and see if anybody else joins. I'm very happy with this group, but if we can have more people, that would be great.
Alexi, you should consider having your picture in the data tracker updated. Mine is badly out of date, but yours looks like somebody else from a different generation.
It's true. That looks like it's a 20-year-old picture, Alexa.
I just never age, you know. I'm frozen in time. It is nearly 20 years old, yes.
You should in Bangkok. You should take advantage of the photo. The formal photo thing.
I do find I'm not the only one who like a lot of pictures in LinkedIn and various other places kind of frozen in time as well. So.
It looks like nobody's come on since you said let's wait for more people to come on. So I think we should start.
Yeah, I might as well slowly start going through the boilerplate and stuff. I will get to this, but can somebody scribe notes? Take notes.
I can.
That would be great. Thank you, Todd. Again, just major, decisions. Okay, so we're online. This is our first interim of 2025. We'll find out whether it will be the last or not later on. Welcome. We are covered by IETF Note Well and IETF procedures as usual. I believe all people here should be familiar with this, but this is just a quick reminder. As usual, be polite, be technical, be respectful of each other's opinions. And let's do the best we can for the internet. Okay, we have a note taker. Great. You are here. This session is being recorded. Agenda. I know I said we will concentrate on AS tickets. We do have a fair amount of ISG and INA feedback this time, but I'm hoping to cover AS at least partially and directly. Okay, so here we are. message format is done as it was before, as far as I'm concerned. John just posted 39, version 39. We had ISG review comments last week, I think, or it was last week, wasn't it? We initially got 4 discusses, 2 of them are already cleared. I do have some remaining comments on Ori's stuff. Even though he cleared his discuss, it would be just nice to see if we want to follow up on a few things. With AS, I think there will be some, hopefully, smallish recommended changes after today. And I did informal read through the whole document. I think we're missing some text, about security considerations. Don't think a lot of it is missing. I think the document is pretty close to being less callable. Obviously, it's my opinion. I don't particularly want you to prove me wrong, but I think the only way to find out is probably to ask editors to do one more revision and then do last call to get this. And then we will find out how many issues are really remaining. So that, at least that's kind of my proposal on the table, but we'll get to it a little bit later. So this is based on summary that Murray sent to me and John after ISG review. Things crossed out are the things that are already addressed. So the version that went to ISG review was version 38, and John already did various improvements to AIANA considerations and wrong references, a few other things in 39. So we already addressed some of these issues. But mainly we have, yes, Pete.
So questions. If we know Paul's discuss is going to be hopefully cleared by doing this, did we check with everybody who said, I agree with Paul, that they're all on board with that discuss clearing? I'm thinking
I don't actually know how to, I don't know how to do that.
I mean, I just check with Deb, to make sure she's cool with the solution that making the AS reference normative. I mean, we all know this is a nose-holding exercise for everyone involved, but I just want to make sure that everybody is collectively holding their noses.
Would uncomfortably holding our noses be adequate?
Yeah, okay, so Todd, can you minute action item for chairs to double check? I would double check with Deb and probably Roman.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
As the main people. Oh, Murray.
Murray has an answer.
Catch me up. I just joined seconds ago, so I don't even know what you're talking about.
My question was, Alexei said, sounds like making the AS reference normative will clear Paul's discuss. Who just popped in? Are we convinced that everybody who said yes, Paul's right is also okay with once? Yeah.
I haven't specifically asked, like gone to Ecker and asked, or gone to Martin Thompson and asked, or whoever else piled up behind it. But that my understanding.
My understanding with Ecker was that it's the same thing. He said like it's not ideal, but like if the AS is normative and the AS handles it, then whatever, we'll do that.
Yeah,
okay. Then everybody will hold their nose. And then good. I'm glad to hear that. And then the only other thing I would add to the last bullet is we're doing the second last call to confirm consensus on that, but we also have to note the down ref because it's going to be a down ref.
Star TLS is a down ref?
No, the AS is going to be a
AS is-
down ref. We're gonna have a full standard in 5322 that is down refing
a proposed standard.
A proposed standard, which is the AS.
Got it. I think we'll be
so
fine
make
with
sure that's in the announcement.
Yes, that's on me to make sure of.
Okay. Sounds good. Right, I'm going to go through various IANA and ISG issues and things that John asked me to raise with the wider group. In particular, he wanted the Appendix E, which is changes from, to be double checked. Can we have some volunteers that we can nag?
We don't need very many volunteers, but I threw this together fairly quickly, and I don't believe it. Indeed, I have substantive reason to believe that nobody else has looked at it. So at least we should get somebody to do a careful reading of it.
I admit I did check earlier versions, but I didn't do it this time. So that's why probably I missed it. Todd?
What's the time frame for reviewing Appendix E?
Um, 1-2 weeks.
Then I'll volunteer.
Okay, that would be great. Okay, so Pete also volunteered. Excellent. Can we please minute that? Right. Now we're coming up to the issue we are briefly discussed just now. This is the relevant text of Paul's discuss. Paul, I don't want to nitpick. I think I mentioned in my reply saying that your discuss made it sound as if we had a normative reference and then we changed to informative. No, it was always informative. And it was always there. We just changed the text around it to strengthen it. But I think the main point is feeling by various members of the IETF that this reference should be normative. As a compromise of not talking about Star TLS specifically. Yes, John?
As I said in various notes, not all of which have gone to the list, I think the bottom line here is that the odds that any implementer or reader or evaluator of conformance to SMTP is even going to notice this distinction are extremely small. And I'm therefore only worried about a pragmatic issue. And the pragmatic one is I'd really like to see 5321 completely locked down in the same, in at least the same sense as 5322 is locked down, and preferably published before we try to wrap up the AS. And the side effect of turning this into a normative reference is that it locks all three documents together in terms of publication schedules. But I don't believe substantively this is a big deal. And if we have to do it, then as I said earlier, I will hold my nose along with others.
Hey, Murray?
This may be a loaded question, but how far do we think we are from having an AS that's ready for the IESG? Not trying to get that one in my term, but if you are you worried that the time period is very long between now and when the AS would be ready, or are we relatively close? Your facial expression suggests my question is adorable.
Since Alexi's hesitating, my version would be that that I am curiously in my capacity as co-author, and I think a number of people in the working group have not paid serious attention to the AS either at all or in months until we get 5321 nailed down. These discussions about security considerations and a few other things suggest that we're going to have to take a very careful look at the AS in that capacity. And as a consequence, while Murray's predicting almost done and working group last call in a really short period of time, I am, to put it mildly, not. With the experience last month, I'm anticipating when I start going through that very carefully, that I'm going to have a whole bunch of issues which the working group is going to have to address.
Okay.
I feel more optimistic, but don't prove me wrong. I had a quick scan through the document, and other than a few minor things, I don't think anything is massively missing from it. There is already extensive discussion of Start TLS, both opportunistic and mandatory, and various extensions. There is discussion of DKIM and SPF. There is discussion of authentication. So I think we might need a bit more introduction, and actually in different contexts, Tara posted a few sentences suggesting, introduction for various specs referenced in this section of the document. So yeah, I'm feeling slightly more optimistic. I would really like to start last call like within a week or two, assuming that Ken and John can do a revision of the document with just a few minor things.
And that's, again, mostly Ken, unless we can get 5321 nailed down.
Ken?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll get to edits next week, but maybe by the end of the month, I can have the edits done. Did my audio come through or no?
Yes. I think that would be great. So basically, this is something I discussed with Murray privately, of saying, do we need to have AAS pass working group last call before we re-IETF last call the normative reference to AS in SMTP spec. Maybe not, but I think it would be nice to have an AS in a version which might not be 100% polished, but at least has all the content that we want, which I think is the few notes I sent you. Like we have a long section about Start TLS, but we don't actually say that Start TLS is required to implement by servers. I don't think that's particularly controversial, because I think we believe that pretty much all servers do that anyway. John?
Ken, I strongly suggest you review the RFC, which specifies what's supposed to be in security consideration sections. Because if we're going to go into strongly arguing for or endorsing or requiring Start TLS, much less SPF and DKIM, some of us, based on the still bleeding wounds from the recent process, are going to insist that the risks and strengths and edge cases be thoroughly explored in the AS, as that document requires.
Pete?
I don't think you're going to hear much support for some sort of requirement for DKIM and SPF in the AS. And the form of the requirement for Start TLS, I think, is going to be, well, I mean, there's going to be you would be an idiot in this day and age not to implement the, at least the opportunistic TLS and implementing the at least having an implementation of TLS is going to be required for all intents and purposes. How we word that to make everybody happy is a good question, but I don't think we're going to have a big blow up. So, for what it's worth.
Yep. Murray?
This is largely anecdotal, but my experience with running mail servers, a private mail server on the internet these days, is nobody of interest or nobody important will talk to you if you don't participate in Start TLS. But DKIM you can get away with for still, like unsigned mail is equivalent, or a email with a bad signature on it is the same as email with no signature on it. So it's the internet is still relatively fine with unsigned mail, but not the absence of TLS is actually a problem these days.
Again, I believe the text is there. It's just maybe tuning the level of details and level of, requirements versus, it's nice to have type things.
Yeah, I'm just saying, don't worry about DKIM, don't worry about SPF. I don't think anybody's going to complain if they're not in the AS. Other than as like passing, these things are there too. You might want to think about them.
Well, actually, because this was brought up by Donald Eastlake, he wanted SPF and DKIM text in the base spec. I think some people might disagree with you, but I hope we can argue back. There will be some taxes, not necessarily to the same level of requirement as he expects in particular. So we might need your help on this. Murray, do you have any final words on this?
Not on that, no.
Okay. All right. So yeah, as a chair, I think I recommend we just make the reference normative and then just concentrate on getting AS complete as soon as possible. I'm hoping that Murray can at least, yes, thank you, John. That Murray can at least initiate IETF plus colonnade, but we'll see how far we can go.
On the AS, if it lands while I still hit the button, then absolutely I will.
Yep. All right. We have quite a long list of, they might sound like a quite very small IN issues, but they have some consequences. So this is part of Roman's discuss, I think. Basically, in 5321, we only allowed for standard track or experimental RFCs to register extensions. With this effort, this was reworked to have two models. One is currently approximately IETF review, and this will be discussed on a few slides that follow. The other one is first come, first serve. Roman specifically had some questions about things like the wording like approximately equivalent to IETF review, what exactly it means. The text also says about in rare cases specifically approved by ISG IETF stream informational. Why is the specific cases? How can ISG, well, future ISGs reject an IETF stream informational document describing SMTP extension, what the criteria are? So, just to refresh everybody's memory, I put the next slide shows what IETF review means. I think the two main points is there is still expectation of IETF community review by working groups, directors, and other experts, and all RFC types are allowed as long as they are approved by ISG as having IETF consensus. So I also highlighted that it's also possible to do historic, so a historic RFC can register historic SMTP extension as the Texas as IETF, if we were to use IETF review. Yes, John?
We're in a funny situation here because some months ago, probably within a year, but maybe close to that, there was an extended discussion with Diana about variations in handling of IANA consideration sections, and in particular, we were strongly urged to go ahead and create variations on what it was that 8126 said, and that was common behavior. We should just spell it out. And both models 1 and model 2 spell out variations and approximations. And our first problem now is we're getting objections to words like approximation and variation, in spite of that these things are. And the second is that we're being told that
let's not talk about variations on first come first serve just yet. I have slides further down.
Okay.
Let's concentrate on this part, and I have next slide hopefully will help people to see which options we have. Pete?
Yeah, I read Roman not as complaining about that these are variants, but complaining that there's mushy language that says this is approximately like, or that in rare cases without spelling out what decisions to be made. So I think he would, for instance, I don't know whether this is the right answer or not. Instead of saying in rare cases, if it said the IESG may approve at their discretion without mentioning the cases, that might be sufficient. He might want more instructions, but what I didn't hear him say was he wanted us to stick to one of the choices. I think he just didn't like the language that wasn't precise.
That was my understanding as well, and Murray can actually give us some information.
I need to drop off right after I say this, but my read of Roman's thing was, you guys are saying this is approximately IETF review, but it just looks like plain old IETF review to me. What's the distinction you're making? So there may just be some, if we tidy up some language, his concern goes away, and it's not that we actually have to change anything. I need to drop for another meeting. Thanks for following up on all this. And the IANA part is the part I really want to know the most about, so I'll contact people probably over the weekend.
Yeah, okay. You can check the notes we have from the rest of this. Okay, so I think going forward, I assume, John, you agree with me. There are three choices. We either go back to the original procedure and just say standards track and IETF experimental that matches previous RFC. Then we don't need to have specify any rare cases as approved by ISG. And because people can already use first come, first serve, that kind of catches all the other exception cases. That's one option. The second option is keep the current language, but actually give more instructions about when ISG should say, yes, this is acceptable use of IETF stream informational. The third choice is drop the rare cases specifically approved by ISG language and just say IETF review and hope or expect the future ISG just to have enough expertise and do the right choice. So I would really like to discuss which preference people have in this respect.
Okay, my personal belief after worrying about this, worrying at it for weeks now, is that the first option is the only viable one. Adding specific instructions. What we really meant was rare cases. The only rare case I can immediately identify has to do with issues about change control that prevents somebody from putting something on standards track is clearly not appropriately experimental. But the reason why this was written vaguely was to say take this seriously and reject things unless there's a good reason. And the other part of this discussion was basically that the ISG is going to approve informational publications unless there's a really, really good reason not to. And if that's the if that's the position, then information is a bad idea, and bullet 2 doesn't work. And of course, bullet 3 is just a variation on that theme, because if we really want information to be used only in very exceptional cases, then we're going to need to spell that out. And I've therefore become increasingly convinced that we should just pull information out of this, go back to the rules we've had for more than 2 decades, and move on. And I want to remind the working group of something I mentioned in it. I think I mentioned it in an on-list note, which is if you look at the registry, we're registering new SMTD extensions at a rate of about 1 every 5 years. So it's not as if this is a major, going to affect lots of things issue.
John, I think I was agreeing with you up to the point of the rate of registration. I think us having first come, first serve will prompt more registrations. I think we know that. So, but that's okay.
And we can come back to that under the IANA considerations part of that discussion. But part of what I'm trying to defend here is language which was forced on me in when the very first extensions document was committed, and I'm sorry nobody else involved in that is on this call, but that is that every extension is a threat to the integrity and interoperability of SMTP, and they better be worth the trade-offs. And that's why, again, we can come back to this with the IANA stuff, but that's why there's a lot of language in Model 2 which goes beyond just run up and register and nobody's going to ask any questions.
Okay. Pete?
I was hoping someone else was going to remember why this got introduced in the first place. I have a vague recollection that this was about the possibility, which has happened in other working groups in other protocols, that, for instance, um, ITUT develops something or IEEE develops something that requires an extension, but it's not a standard Stract document. They are simply documenting what they produced, and whether we put it in the registry should be entirely up to the IASG insofar as, is this something that is legitimately a standard that is under reasonable change control that we're going to trust them for it, or is it not? And that's happened in other places in our registries, and we've done that, and that has been acceptable, save one really nasty one that I can think of. But and if we want that to be the case, then we can say something like that. But if we really can't think of why we would want an informational document to do this, then punt and go to IETF review or or the equivalent.
I
Again,
think with
the other cases you're mentioning, Pete, are cases in which the just use model 2 option do not exist. So to a certain extent,
Fair enough.
To a certain extent, one could argue that what you just said is model 2 with a gold star rather than
Right.
model informational.
Absolutely.
And I have been trying to figure out the history, and my notes don't show it, but I suspect we may have put informational in here before we threw up our hands and did the dual model and then forgot to take it out, which would be exactly consistent with this discussion.
my recollection is roughly what Pete says. I think it was an example of other things that we don't know if they will happen, but potentially somebody trying to document what's there. So to clarify, the option number 1, which is going back to standard Stract and experimental. Hypothetical example, if ITU come up with a SMTP extension, they can still get potentially IETF informational, but they will have to use first come first serve model for doing so. So the tag that will end up in the registry is going to be first come first serve as opposed to IETF approved label. So that's the only difference, really.
Exactly, but that gets back to Pete's version explanation, which is this is not an IETF approved document. This is a document which the IETF has decided to publish for the convenience of the community. And from that point of view, if the IETF wants to publish an informational document, nothing prevents that. And nothing prevents the first come, first served registration from referencing it. Indeed, it would be encouraged as the document is now written. So the only issue is one of really something very close to IETF endorsement of the protocol, an extension rather than IETF endorsement publication. And if that's where we're getting hung up, then the right answer may very well be IETF stream publication of an informational document and Model 2 registration.
Okay. I have a flashback from TLS related to the discussions about national crypto and what is endorsed by IETF. So there is a bit of a similar flavorish to this. I was initially in the choice 2 or choice 3 camp, but I think I'm okay with choice 1. So, John, I believe your preference is choice 1. Do people want to weigh in whether choice 1 is not acceptable?
Just a thought which may help split this hair, which is if I take informational out, I can, if the working group is okay with it, add a comment under Model 2, which you'll note I'm not calling it FCFS, but add a note under Model 2 indicating that for an externally approved document, which the IETF decides to publish as informational, that the appropriate registration model would still be Model 2. And that would completely clarify what we've been going
I
around.
think that would be great, and then we'll avoid people trying to figure out whether we just forgot about this case. Is it legal? Is it illegal? So I think yes. Going back to standard track and experimental and adding a sentence clarifying that, well, you can use first come first serve for other stuff, I think would be great. So we'll double check this on the mailing list, but because I haven't heard any objections to this, I think let's go with this option. So John, just give chairs few days to post a message to the mailing list, and then in the next revision, I think this can be changed unless we receive lots of pushback. Todd?
So just to be clear, the decision here is a combination of bullets 1 and 2. We're going to drop IETF informational, but add
No.
instructions. No.
No, I think it's just combine. It's one, but in model 2 description, we can clarify that it can be used with other types of RFCs. So if somebody wants to document historical information or non-experimental protocol already in use somewhere in an RFC, they can use first come first serve.
The odds of my actually just be able to get into a revision of the document within the next several days are just about zero. So your schedule works. But let me post the draft text for this particular sentence or two to the list as soon as I have it, so we can have a discussion of that. That'll further clarify.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, moving on to other things. Even though this issue is under IANA comments, this is actually my issue, I think. Basically, the way that text is currently written is there is an extra column saying which model of registration is used for registering this particular extension. And then there is a third choice called legacy for verb and 1x, which I believe are send-mail extensions registered once upon a time. I would like to understand why we need legacy and how is it different from first come first serve that could have been used many years ago if it was available. John?
I tried tracking back through my.
I cannot hear anything, John.
Sorry. You hear me now?
Nope.
Oh, lovely.
I can hear you.
I can hear you too.
Pete?
Oh,
Yep,
okay.
it's just Alexa.
Unless it's on my end.
Okay. I've tried tracking back through my ancient notes and recollections, and I think you may have just, Alexi.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I lost sound. Let me reload on my end. I'll be back in a moment. John, can you try to talk again?
Yes. Is that better? I guess not.
I still don't hear anything. This is very annoying.
Yeah, Alexei, we we hear you. Can you hear any of us?
Yeah, let me try different setup. I will log in for audio on a different device, and I will use my laptop just to change slides. Sorry about that.
Enjoying your nice clicky keyboard there, John, but you could mute.
Sorry, I'm used to a certain other conferencing tool which suppresses it.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yay!
Sorry about that. Yeah, it's kind of annoying when you're driving the whole discussion and then technology fails you. So anyway, all right. Sorry, John, I missed your explanation why we need legacy.
Okay. I just decided to type while you were off, so it's mostly the chat, but let me go back through it quickly. I've got back through every note I could find. It's about 40 years old. And my recollection and reconstruction is that one of the comments you made, Alexei, is key, which is that this was put into SendMail, but it was never documented for the community and never registered. And in order to tie down the name and provide a, if you have questions about this, go see him because everything else is hopeless, pointer. Pastel put this in the registry. So this is not, this would have been registered under first come, first serve, or it was equivalent to first come, first serve on an exception basis 35 years ago. This is really an exceptional registration. And none of this current terminology applies. Now, if legacy is a bad word, we could say ancient exception, or just ancient, or dinosaur, or any of a whole series of other things. But the notion of reclassifying into first come, first serve is just historically inaccurate. And as I think I said, one note to you, if anybody doesn't like that, I strongly suggest that they take it up with Postel and come back with his answer.
Alexi doesn't want to call on me, so I'm going to call on me myself. Um,
Sorry, I was muted. Can you hear me?
yes, now we can.
Okay, go on.
I guess my question is, does it really do something useful to separate out this category instead of folding it into what will now be first come, first serve? Because we could simply say in first come, first serve, it's for things that we're just holding it for future use, and also for things that were in past use but are no longer used. That this is just holding the place so no one else reuses it for purposes that would be bad. What's the downside, John, to saying meh, just fold them all into the same model?
Let me turn the question around.
Mhm.
These two things are already in the registry in a very special way, because they do not refer to a document, they simply have a human name on them.
Right.
So to turn the question around, what's the downside of recognizing this reality and saying none of the above?
This is actually, look at the following slide. Because Ayana asked about what happens if somebody wants to update them. And if it's a different category, you need to specify extra text explaining it.
But I think that extra text is already at least in
It's
draft.
not, because you don't say we don't say anything about how legacy can be updated and whether they can be updated. If you want to say they cannot be updated, that's okay, but this text needs to be added.
Okay, I have no problem saying that for legacy registrations, if you want to change the registration, you need to go find yourself a new verb. Because part of the problem with trying to update these ancient things is that because it's not documented, there's no document to refer to, it's not clear what updating the bloody thing means. And if there is a document, then somebody making a judgment about whether that document accurately reflects the state of the art of the SendMail implementation in 1980 something or other, leads us into a rat hole of colossal proportions. So if your concerns be satisfied by an explicit sentence which says that nothing but IETF and FCFS are updatable, that's fine with me.
Yes, that's basically my concern. There was a missing case of what you do on updates.
Fine. I thought I covered that. If I didn't cover that, I will do so.
So my answer to your first question, John, which was what's the downside to making a separate category, is just a reference to some dude named Occam. That aside, I guess, so right now on a particular keyword, it basically points to go talk to Eric Allman and see what he says about it, but it's not for use. And if Eric says, you know what, I'm retired and Pete knows about these keywords as well as I do, tell people to go ask Pete if they want to know. I don't see a downside to updating the referent to me instead of Eric if Eric, wants to move to Fiji. And meh. It just seems like a waste to come up with a separate category where it's hold this and there's going to be a pointer to the referent. It's either going to be a document or some human who can tell you whether or not this is actually going to be used.
And the reference to a document is not required for first come, first served. So
Right. So, I mean, you could fill in the referent field if there's no document with "Go ask Eric Allman." Not a hill I'm going to die on. I promise you. It seems simpler seems better.
Well, if in the context of these IANA discussions, simpler were better, we would not be having this discussion. And that is actually part of the problem here, which is that if IANA is going to insist upon very high precision instructions in some cases, then it seems to me we should have high precision in other cases. And if Eric stands up and says, "Don't bother me, go see Pete," I believe that contemporary standards say that Pete needs to have a document, even if that document is a 2 or 3 page paragraph, 2 or 3 paragraph page, which says, well, this is Eric's stuff, and you can find the 1980 whatever SMTP code at the following location, and I'll try to answer questions if you have them. Then we've still got a third category.
okay, I'm kind of having the same opinion as Pete, but I would be satisfied if you want to just clarify that legacy cannot be updated. Basically, just clarity. Either get rid of legacy and then it will make it simpler. The rest of the text will be fine, or add a sentence saying the legacy entries cannot be updated.
Okay. I'll add a sentence which says legacy can't be updated. Recommendations when you were the working group as to whether I should point out that somebody can always come up with a new keyword should be added there or not. I will listen to because I'm indifferent, but that's fine.
Okay, fine. Yeah, that's fine. This is kind of indirectly from comments received by Amanda. She observed that IANA registration is used both for implementers and for IANA, and she wanted some specific instructions for IANA and was asking whether implementers also need to read it. So somewhat related to this is question about IANA registration template in particular. How technical should this be? Do we want to give... So one use case I had in mind is if somebody goes to IANA registry for some reason, find list of SMTP extensions, then decide to find our document and see the registration template in order to register something new. Do we have enough references in there to the rest of the cross-reference to the rest of the document so that information can be found? People can agree or disagree whether it's a useful use case. One small example where it might matter is like third parameter in the registration template is, it says eHello parameter. If you search the rest of your document, you probably will figure out that it corresponds to eHello-param ABNF non-terminal. Should we just add the reference? John?
Okay, my real concern here is making this IANA considerations section so specific and so complicated and so long that that nobody reads it. And then I had a situation, which is the thing that Amanda seems to most want to avoid, of having to think at the risk of small exaggeration.
Right.
And with regard to this particular one, I don't care. There are 3 ways of dealing with this. Method number 1 is to put eHello param into this particular case as a cross-reference, but if we do that, then every other field which is described, which has a syntax, needs the same cross-reference, at which point this is getting a little tedious. Option number 2, which I mentioned in a note in -39 and did with the eHello param as an example, is to put all of these things which appear in the IANA considerations stuff into the index in terms to point to where the syntax is defined. And option number 3 is just to ignore this, of course, but whether that's a good idea or not, I don't know. I would like to hear from Barry if he's willing to comment on whether when 8126 was defined, it was anticipated that IANA would be asking for detail about every comma and every field name and every bit and piece of this stuff. Because if I correctly understand the multiple discussions I've had with Amanda in the last month, discussions which she has notably decided not to make public, whether this was ever anticipated.
Well, so I'll say that IANA has always asked us to be very specific about the contents of the registries, but and specific about what IETF approvals are needed, but not to go into IANA's processes in implementing that. So it's always been, they've always wanted to know how we want the registry laid out. They've always wanted to know what the ranges are for each entry in the registry, all that kind of stuff, so that they don't have to guess.
I think you should qualify always a bit, but
well, always in the time that I was working on the update to the document.
that's fine. This has seemed to me to be going much beyond anything I've ever encountered before. So be it. That's a different discussion. Thanks.
Yeah, I think one possible issue here, again, kind of deducting from Amanda's comments, is because there is first come first serve registration model. In theory, it doesn't involve talking to any experts. So for things like a hello keyword, there is already text explaining its letter, digit, hyphen. That's enough for them because they wouldn't necessarily read ABNF. That's enough for them to verify that, if somebody puts 2 words with a space in between it, then it's not valid. For eHello parameter, it becomes slightly more complicated. So obviously people can do obscure things and they probably wouldn't catch it. But
okay, and that's a place where eHello parameter, where eHello name, but not eHello parameter, is different from everything else. Because under model 2, and this is fairly carefully spelled out, and IANA is told what to do about it, the registrant is perfectly permitted to say, go register this keyword, and I'm not going to tell you a thing about any of those other fields, and you just fill them in as not supplied. So there's no
But
basis.
if they're supplied but incorrect, that's the question.
If they're supplied and incorrect, Amanda has made it very clear that she's just going to write it down because not IANA's business to evaluate these things.
Right.
So again, this gets back to who's the audience, and if the audience is simultaneously IANA and the registrant, and Model 2 does contain language which says, we really hope these people will
Have a clue.
We'll use the IETF model. And if they don't use the IETF model, we'll be very careful and supply information and ask people and all that other stuff. And if that's not clear enough in Model 2, we should fix it. But then the question becomes how much we want to clutter this IANA consideration section up with things that IANA isn't going to check anyway.
Okay. So you propose to create an index for this. I think because index is not something that is used very common in RFCs, I think the exact effect, if this parameter will point to a specific section, where it's specified in ABNF, I think this addressed my concern.
If I look like I'm about to die on this particular hill, I apologize. Part of what you're hearing is just frustration with the overall interactions with IANA. But if you want this as a cross-reference, I will put it as a cross-reference. It's less work than doing the index. If you want the cross-reference and the index, I can do that too. And that's
realistically, it feels like a description and other things, they don't need cross-reference. So I don't think it's a big deal either way. This is the only one. The hello parameters was the only field where I knew where to look for because I read the rest of the document, but that's my
If you're speaking, I can't hear you.
Yeah, we lost Alexei's audio.
Sorry, I'm back. I had to reload again. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So
okay, I'll put in the cross-reference. It's really the battle reach resistance. I'll put in the cross-reference. I'll take the stub index entry out, unless somebody wants to make an argument for our doing that. But people should look through this thing and see if any other cross-references are needed, because some of those fields, even if syntax isn't specifically defined, are going to need pointers back to 4111 or 4111 to figure out what they actually are.
I think that's the only one that kind of missing obvious cross-reference. I think the rest is fine. But okay. I will ask people to double check. All right, okay. Moving on. That's another thing that came up. IANA prefers contact and change controller as separate fields because even though in many cases they are the same people or entities, but sometimes people do third-party registrations, especially with first come, first serve. And sometimes contact is a specific person or working group where change controller can be more generic, like organization or IETF. So my understanding, John, is that you're okay with splitting them up.
John, you're muted.
Oh, sorry. 8126 separates them. If we if we don't separate them and Amanda continues to whine, I'm certain somebody's going to show up with a discuss pointing to 8126, because that's how this has been going. So let's just change it.
Okay, sounds good. Done. Another point that you brought up is that there are two fields which seem to be subtly different, but probably confusingly so. Their description and behavior and impact. I initially thought that there was some registration templates that clearly separated them after checking existing RFCs. I checked like 5, and yeah, I think same field is fine.
Yeah, this separation occurred only because of the somewhat mechanical and rather frustrated way in which I created that list. And when I went back and looked at it and looked at some of the things which had appeared in description in the past, I decided it was a mistake. So,
okay.
So from my point of view, this is just undoing a mistake that I made in too much haste.
Right. Yeah.
And I certainly agree with you about expanding the definition of description a little bit to include other things it might include. Although looking at existing descriptions to show that too. So it's just a matter of consistency.
Okay. Sounds good. So I assume you will handle this and we'll propose some text. Moving on. This is the thing that might be subtle, but Ayana seems to care about this. Basically, we have existing registrations that were created by earlier versions of RFCs, and in some cases, we are very clear that they were created by some certain versions of RFCs. What RFC editor will do is they will change present tense to past tense, and with that, information about whether this was created earlier or in this instantiation of the document will be lost. So they wanted to just make it clear and asked us to insert RFC references if it was created earlier. I think this only affects, this only concerns like 1 or 2 sections. So it's only in 2 places where I'm missing this.
Well, it is, but again, this is supposed to be about IANA considerations. And if Amanda wants to get into the history of assorted registrations, then we can do that, but that doesn't affect anybody coming up with a new registration. And if somebody goes off and wants to modify an existing registration, they better understand the context of the existing registration, which in most cases goes well beyond created by RFC 2000, which I hope wasn't issued. So again, this is a certain amount of work, but I think it's adding clutter, and I think it's an editorial comment that's beyond what ought to be in IANA's complaints. And if my frustration is coming through, I apologize.
Anybody else wants to weigh in?
If it's important to say before 5321, then it's important to say where. And that requires a fair amount of historical digging around.
I don't think they only ask for reference, because I think modular renaming some sub-registries for clarity, I think it's quite obvious where they were defined.
Exactly.
Well, but
the thing is, I had to dig in and I had to figure out that certain registries were not created in 2821, for example, and only in 5321. So,
and some of them predate 2821 and were created by the, stupid extensions document in 92 or 93. And at least one of them predates that and was created without separate documentation about creating it by Pastel at his discretion. And again, this is historical information. And yes, I have had to dig through all of this stuff and look up where these things came from several times in the last 6 months. And I spent tremendous amounts of time doing it. But does it contribute to the information IANA needs to create either a new registration or a modifying existing one? Not one bit.
is this the hill you want to die on? I don't think they asked for, to finding out specific dates. They just want a few RFC references.
In a note which I think I sent to you but may have suppressed.
Yes.
This is one of those things in which I believe that Amanda is exceeding IANA's authority to include this in an IANA response to the RFC. If Amanda wants to get on the list and propose editorial changes document, just like every other participant, I am all in favor of that. But if in a document which she has sent only to the ISG, the chairs and the authors, remember, if she wants to start making editorial comments, that's a problem. And without getting into hills I am willing to die on, if the consensus is this text should go in, I intend to raise that publicly and with the IETF IANA coordination effort.
I understand your frustration. I'm frustrated as well, but I don't really want to spend more time on this. For me, the easiest thing is just to do it. I can tell Amanda that we're ignoring some of these, that I can do that too. But if she comes back and asking why, then I'm spending more time explaining why we're not doing it.
And if I do it, I have to spend time editing the document. Do note one other thing, which is that if we start including pointers to 5321 and telling people to go back and read it, then we are not really obsoleting 5321. And we've already seen one objection from the ISG about references to 821.
We can make it informative. I don't think it's particular.
I'm not talking about informative versus not informative. I'm talking about the references at all. Because if we're really obsoleting these documents, then we should not be sending people off to read them.
Okay, I think this alternative would be to say if a registry was created by prior documents without specifying which document. That also works.
Okay, then I suggest we add yet another column to the registry with the date of creation.
No, I don't think this information is particularly required.
Okay, I will go back and look at it again, but that's not a promise.
Okay.
Change.
Anybody else wants to weigh in on this very exciting topic?
I'm not clear on where we landed just now. I thought we were going to just insert the RFC numbers, but then it sounded like we made a last second change there.
I am going to go back and look at the document and make an assessment as to what the implications are of this quote mention end quote of 5321, especially with regard to the issue of whether we are effectively telling people they need to go off and read it along with reading this document, which was up until now completely replacing 5321. And I will either make the change or I will come back to working group and explain what I found.
Okay, sounds good. And I think the second best thing is just making sure that it's clear that registry were created by prior documents and not by this one, without saying which one, which is fine.
Yeah. If the issue is simply saying this registry was created prior to this document,
Yes.
I have no problems at all with that.
Okay.
And I could do that for each and every one of the registries. The thing would set me off was she asked specifically from referencing 5321.
Okay, I think that was just her suggestion of how to deal with this as opposed to addressing specific issue that she has. Okay. If we can just say that they were created by prior documents. If you do this already elsewhere, I can point Amanda to this section and say, look, we don't need to say it because it's already sold elsewhere. But if you don't mind inserting this, that would be great.
Well, the introduction to Section 8 somewhere along the line does say that this is, as well as the introduction document in 1.2, does say this is a combination of prior work and a little of this is new, and most of these registries are old. But if she wants that said on a per registry basis, I can certainly do that.
Okay. If you can do that, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, Todd, erase previous comment and insert that one.
I suspect this comment is also going to be slightly frustrating to discuss. I think basically what I'm getting from this issue is that IANA doesn't want to be in a position to decide whether a particular reference is okay or not, so they want to be told. So that was an attempt to clarify that this will be.
Okay, but we're running back into the same problem. If this thing is going through IETF review, then the ISG already has the responsibility to determining whether or not the references are right. If it is going through first come, first serve, nobody's got the responsibility for determining whether the references are right besides the authors, and IANA isn't going to evaluate that anyway. And pulling in an area director is completely out of scope. So, I don't know where we're going here.
Pete?
If that's the case, if it's either going to be IETF approved or first come, first serve, and we don't care, then that it seems like this sentence is unnecessary.
But this is actually dealing with 25 existing registrations.
Well, then the 25 existing registrations should be laid out with what goes in that field.
No, but they're all of these registrations published before. Well, I think this is basically cleaning up the existing registry.
But then you should.
If we're going to clean up the existing registries, then what this asks for is that the IESG review every single one of those existing registrations.
Whoa, 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 no. If they are existing registrations and that field needs to be filled in, and this document is saying what to do with those existing registrations, then we should just simply tell IANA, ISG doesn't need to check. We should simply tell them what needs to go in that field.
Yeah, but I don't.
Every one of the existing registrations has a reference field, even if it is go talk to Eric.
Right. And so the answer to IANA for this one is it's not if the information is readily available. It's here's the information. Go pull it out of that. Go pull it out of what the registry was before.
That's what it says.
No, if it's saying unless other information is readily available, then you're saying you want them to go check. We don't want them to go check. We want to leave it the way it was. Delete that.
Okay, I'll take the sentence out.
Thank you, Pete.
I try.
Very much appreciated.
Yeah, I think it's telling IANA basically just leave it as it is, and any other fix up we can do out of band. I think that, and the document doesn't need to say that. So I think that's
the other way to look at this, and I don't think we need to write it down if I take the unless clause out.
Yeah.
Is the only other way this should be getting in on the existing registration if somebody comes along and asks to modify the registration, and
yes.
That's the rules are clear.
Okay. Fine. That works. Thank you all. I hope this is not controversial. This is just a blank statement that IANA should update all registries that points to 5321 to point to this document. They said if we want to specify exceptions, we should list them. My understanding, we don't really want any exceptions. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. I believe there are no existing exceptions, but I don't want to swear to that. And I believe that that this question was answered without any negative response from IANA in the one IANA public and registered IANA review we actually have from October. So I don't even understand what this is about.
I think it's basically motivating IANA, and it's a trace that they need to do some action, so which is fine.
Works for me. I'll find a place to put it.
Thank you.
Now I have another problem, which is that this meeting was scheduled for an hour. We're now at an hour and a half, and I have a hard stop in about 10 minutes in order to get out to another meeting.
I think that's fine. Can we have 5 minutes on this, on the first come, first serve, approximately first come, first serve, and then we'll wrap up, and then I'll go to the next steps. The rest I can send on email. From my reading of first come, first serve, it basically says there are no checks and there might be a registration template, and that's it. So I don't think actually saying it's a variation of first come, first serve is useful, because Amanda asked if it's variation, how is it different?
It's different because of all of the language in Model 2, which was really suggesting that people using the first come, first serve method avail themselves of other resources. Think about the Marshall Rose ubiquity comment and do this only if they conclude is necessary. We're not going to prevent them registering stupidity under first come, first serve, but we're requiring or strongly suggesting a great deal more thought and creating a great deal more opportunities for introspection than the just bring it and register it language of first come, first serve at 8126 raises. There's an additional issue here, which I've mentioned in an email message this morning, which is the more we tie this to the specific language of 8126, the more fragile we make it when 8126 is revised. And I would prefer not to tell people that they better go read what 8126 says about this in order to understand what's going on, because they won't, and that runs us into a rat hole. I'd much rather tell them, go read Model 2.
Okay, Barry.
Yeah, so 2 points here. The first one is that it was never the intent of first come, first serve in BCP 26 to say everybody should register every stupid little thing they can think of. I mean, it was always put together a reasonable registration package for this item, and but there's not going to be a gate. So you still have to fill in all the fields. You still have to do whatever IANA wants you to do the registration, but nobody's checking it. Okay, so that's the first part. The second part is that tying with that, the whatever we say in the document for how you need to register or what you need to provide to register something still applies even if it's first come, first serve. So I agree that there's really no reason. We can say all these words we want to about what you should consider and what you need to do and what documentation you need to provide without saying it's a variation. So I would be happy to just drop the words "a variation" on and leave all the rest of the text the same, and I think we're good.
Let me make an alternate suggestion, which I hope will be a middle ground. Let me figure out a way to add to this section some words about encouraging people to look at Model 2.
Yes.
Don't talk about the variations on anything. We just stress that looking at Model 2 is important because there's information there.
Yep, that'd be nice.
That's a much better solution.
Okay.
Sorry it took me this long to get there.
All right, sounds good. Okay. I don't think we want to talk about GKIM and SPF. We already talked it at the beginning of this. Ori's discussed, he actually cleared this information. I think he's okay. But if you had any text early in the document explaining Appendix B and D that you want to insert, that might still be a good idea. I'll leave it up to you. Barry?
A lot of people have said over time that the appendices should always be informative and never be normative, and I don't think I agree with that, and a lot of other people have said
Right.
that they don't agree with that. But Ori cleared his disgust, so I think we should just
Ignore this?
not ignore it so much as say that we have addressed it and decided that no changes are needed.
Okay, that's fine. I tried to extract various comments from Ori about specific text saying that normative should be lowercase because they are not really testable. I'm happy to send this to the mailing list. Barry?
Yeah, I think we can do it on the mailing list quickly. I think the first should be lowercase, but the second one does address an interoperability issue of blocking messages unnecessarily. So I think it should be uppercase, but we can take it up on the list.
Okay.
In my defense, this text long predates when case distinctions there became important.
Yeah. We're not doing blame here, that's not the point of the exercise.
Well, I'm taking the blame, whether you want it cited or not.
No, you don't have to, it's, I think we get it. There was specific suggestion to drop this sentence because it's, again, a bit wishy-washy. Again, I can take it to the mailing list.
Yeah, I don't even understand what the sentence is meant to say.
Well, it's probably a good argument to remove it. Let me post this to the mailing list.
Yeah.
Okay. I will encourage all other hardcore email core people still remaining on the mailing list to please participate and voice your opinion about this. Again, in this case here, Ori actually suggested to change lowercase should to uppercase should. Again, in my ideal world, that would have been like possibly appointed to SMTP auth, but I know we don't want to do this. So again, we can take it to the mailing list. Right. Next steps. John, I think you have some action items from this. Normative reference to AS and some IANA cleanup. I suspect it will address Roman's issues with not being clear, and it will give me enough I believe with remaining issues on IANA we agreed on today, I will be able to argue with Amanda that this is good enough. So then hopefully can do another update to AS to add the reference to start TLS and clarify it's mandatory to implement on server side. And I'm hoping that we can get into working group last call in a couple of weeks' time, or soon after the new version is posted. Do people want another interim? I don't hear. John, you're muted again, I think.
I think the very fact that we did not get to the applicability statement issues on the agenda suggests that we should go ahead and schedule another interim. It's much easier to cancel these things and take them off people's calendars than it is to find time and put them on.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Do people have a preference about dates?
Probably want to avoid the week of February 17th.
What's on the week of February 17th?
MOG.
Well, to be honest, if it's 3 weeks, it's going to be around February 7th. I'm thinking of like the week of 10th.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Okay, fine. I'll get something in the calendar and I'll poll people about their availability soon after this call.
Thank you all. Thank you, John, for the work and for your patience.
Bye, everybody. And yeah, John, thanks for all the work. It is not going unappreciated, please.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. And I think thanking me for my patience may be an exaggeration. But let's move on.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. Okay. I have some emails to follow up. We'll discuss with Todd. Make sure that the minutes reflect decisions correctly. And see you online on the next interim. And if magically we'll resolve everything before then we'll cancel it.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.